Why do we clap? It's so weird. It's so weird. Like, we clap our palms together when someone performs, and it makes this sound. And the louder the sound is, and the more times we do it, the more we like it. It's one of the strangest things when you think about it. Why don't we just slap someone in the face for doing a good job? It makes the same sound. This is insensitivity. As a baby, your parents will hold up your hands and teach you how to clap. It's normal and no one questions it. We just clap because others do. Humans do this all the time with almost anything. So in 4th grade, my class went to a Native American museum. And it was outside and it was interactive, so they had these real teepees and animal skins and jewelry. And I remember that I never really learned that much about Native Americans before, so I was really amazed at the beauty and the complexity of this village that was moved to the museum. And on the way out, the tour guide, who was actually a descendant of Sitting Bull, gave me this arrowhead. And it's right here. And I thought that it was the coolest thing ever. Like, I thought I could throw it at people and like I would put it on a stick and like make my own like arrow or something. I don't know why I would do that, but I kept this with me for a while. I put it in my backpack and I loved it and I would look at it every day. And then eventually I just forgot about it because, you know, it's a rock and it's shiny and it's cool, but, you know, what is it really? So Native Americans were never really brought up again in elementary school, and I forgot all about this arrowhead. They were mentioned during Thanksgiving in 5th grade, but that was pretty much it. Anyway, in freshman year, I was recommended for regular US history, and I didn't really have a preference. You know, I didn't really think I would be that into history, so it was too much effort to wave up, and I just stayed. And I started regular with Miss K as a freshman. And I'll admit, it bored me. All the books we read and all the movies we watched were filled with the same stories of American heroes riding on horses in the middle of the night that I learned since elementary school. And it was the classic early American history pressed into my mind. Then Miss K introduced the class to the book, A People's History of the United States by Howard Zinn. And I didn't know anything about Zinn, but I opened up the book and the first page surprised me. And it began with a quote from a journal. They brought us parrots and balls of cotton and spears and many other things, which they exchanged for the glass beads and hawk's bells. They willingly traded everything they owned. They were well built, with good bodies and handsome features. They did not bear arms and did not know them, for I showed them a sword, and they took it by the edge and cut themselves out of ignorance. They have no iron. Their spears are made of cane. They will make fine servants. With 50 men, we could subjugate them all and make them do whatever we want. This journal was actually Christopher Columbus's, and he wrote this on the same day he landed in the Caribbean, October 12, 1492, after his famous 3-month journey. On this same day, he ordered 3 natives to be captured. So I knew that many people don't consider Columbus a hero because he was responsible for the genocide of thousands of native people. But reading his point of view and how he brutally dehumanized these people was shocking to me because I never learned anything about that before. I continued reading into people's history, and I began to love history. And as I read, I discovered a whole new culture that I really wasn't exposed to in elementary school. The way Zinn describes Native Americans is in regards to the progress of America, because it's called A People's History of the United States. So it's focused on battles and land cessions. But the number of American Indian deaths was enormous. This entire civilization was reduced to mortality rates and acres of land. I kept reading, and I'm still right in the middle of it, but I can never shake the impression the first page of the book had on me. Think back to elementary school, even middle school. We only learned about Native Americans during October for Columbus Day and November during Thanksgiving. Why do we ignore this vibrant civilization 10 months out of the year? This results in me and thousands of other children knowing almost nothing about Native Americans during elementary and middle school. So sometime in October of last year, I asked my guidance counselor to move me up to honors history. I wanted to learn more about the role of Native Americans in the creation of the America we know today. However, Native Americans were rarely mentioned rarely mentioned in the honors course, and when they were, it was only in regards to a battle for land. Now I'm in AP US History, and again, Native Americans are only mentioned in regards to war and oppression. In fact, in the AP US History course and exam structure by College Board, the only times Native Americans are mentioned are in regards to European interaction and war in the early United States. Learning early Native American history is very important, but it is because this topic is not expanded on that generalizations and stereotypes about Native Americans are created and strengthened. I don't want to talk about ceding back land, passing legislation, or protesting. Education is the most important tool in preserving Native American traditions, cultures, and territory. Limited exposure and opportunity for the history of Native Americans in curriculums leads to cultural assumptions, and everything starts when we're young, even clapping. Learning to respect these people outside the wigwams and not just during Thanksgiving fights stereotypes created in our minds as early as elementary school. And that's why early education needs to incorporate more Native Americans into lessons. The popular stereotype of a Native American was not born because of their absence in the high school curriculum. It was born because of their absence in elementary school. If we learned about Native Americans all year when we were young, besides just during Columbus Day and Thanksgiving, we would combat cultural insensitivity at a very young age. And hopefully each child could get their own Arrowhead experience. Books like Lessons from Turtle Island, Native Curriculum in Early Childhood Classrooms by Guy W. Jones and Sally Muma helps with incorporating Native Americans into elementary schools like mine. This book includes multiple opportunities to incorporate Native Americans in lessons throughout the year. Here's an excerpt from chapter 1 of that book. Omission of Native peoples from the curriculum, inaccurate curriculum, and stereotyping all amount to cultural insensitivity. This is heightened, however, when well-meaning teachers introduce projects that are culturally inappropriate. These projects include feathers and headdresses, peace pipes, totem poles, dream catchers, sand paintings, pictographs, rattles, drums, and brown paper bag vests. Although there's nothing wrong with those crafts, only teaching through projects like these enforces stereotypes about Native Americans because children learn to believe that these projects represent the entirety of Native American culture. This ignorance is noted later in life by Gregory D. Smithers, a professor of history at Virginia Commonwealth University, in his article, Teaching Native American History in a Polarized Age for the American Historian. He writes, "In recent years, I've discovered that many students find Native American history a mystery. They're curious, but a lack of historical knowledge has them feeling reticent to engage in conversation. Many of these students express disappointment about the limitations of their K-12 history education. Others bring deep-seated cultural assumptions, cliches, and racial preconceptions about Native American people with them when they arrive at university." Imagine a new generation of children educated in Native American history and culture. Imagine if every child had their own Arrowhead experience. Imagine if every child was exposed to an ignored indigenous civilization right here in America. This new generation would preserve Native American traditions for centuries. In Montana, there is an unprecedented constitutional amendment that requires teachers to integrate information about Native American history and culture in the curriculums. In 1972, Montana added a pledge to its constitution to use education to preserve cultural heritage of Native Americans. This legislation prevents patterns of ignorance shown by American people and helps keep traditions alive. Why do we clap? It's natural. We clap because others do. We clap because that's what we've been doing our whole lives. Now think about Native Americans. Native Americans are ignored by our students because they are ignored by our teachers and they are ignored by our curriculums. Limited knowledge about Native Americans should not be common. Ignorance about the people who lived on this country before we did and still do should not be natural. And education in history is extremely important. But being knowledgeable, respectful, and well-informed about where the United States came from would give us more to applaud about. Thank you.